But as Canadians, we embrace that shit.
We're not Canadian.
I am.
Oh. I'm putting that in the intro.
Yeah. What's up, guys? Welcome to Forge Master Metal Reviews. This is the place where you can get the most out of your metal.
What are some things that you think about when it comes to Canada? Let us know in the comments. But did you know that they have a pretty fucking awesome metal scene?
There are fantastic metal bands from Canada, and today we are going to talk about a bunch of them. So throw a few of your favorites down in the comments below, and we also have our friend Rob from the Metal Meltdown here with us to talk about his favorites.
Make sure you get mad at whatever he says. He loves when people get mad. What are some of your favorite Canadian metal bands? Let us know in the comments below. And if you dig stuff like this, hit that like button. It really helps us out. And if you're new, subscribe.
Put on your toques and get ready to be sorry, eh? Let's get into our best metal from Canada. I'm actually really excited about all three of my picks here today. These were bands that were important to my youth, totally unique in their given subgenres, and their first one that I'm going to talk about is Into Eternity. Their debut self-titled album, total sleeper hit in the progressive metal scene. The production's a bit rough, but I think the songwriting and the musicianship are impeccable. Dead or Dreaming, their sophomore record, has some pretty damn good songs on it, but it wasn't until their third album, Buried in Oblivion, where the band maxed out what they were capable of. This is a perfect record. The pacing is masterful. The technicality is simultaneously awe-inspiring yet totally accessible. And the diversity of the vocals, it's just amazing. They have since kind of stumbled away from their magnum opus that was Buried in Oblivion, releasing average records while struggling with maintaining a core lineup. Unfortunately, the band also lost one of their main songwriters, Rob Doherty, who unfortunately tragically passed away at 41 years old.
But there is some silver lining here. Stu Block is back in the band after leaving Iced Earth. Iced Earth kind of sucks anyways. And he left in 2013. So yeah, now he's back. So hopefully we get some Buried in Oblivion level fucking vibes.
That would be awesome. Stu is back on the block. What?
Woods of Ypres, one of my favorites. You had mentioned bands that we grew up on, so this is just one of the best and one of the most important. One of the more underappreciated black and folk and doom, whatever. I don't even know what to call this band, honestly. They're kind of a mix-up of a bunch of stuff. Just honestly, they did not get the attention that they deserved. Formed in 2002, the band released 5 full-length albums, which is pretty prolific for the time period of the band being active. Pursuit of the Sun and Allure of the Earth, as well as Woods 3, were released on Crankin' House Records, run by the drummer, and vocalist and guitar player, David Gold. Woods 3 to this day is still one of my favorite records of all time. It's one of those albums just like The Mantle. We listen to it camping all the time. The band was signed to Earache Records in 2010, where they released Woods 4, the Green Album, and Woods 5, Gray Skies and Electric Light. And those two albums are just perfection in my opinion. The band tragically broke up though after the unexpected death of David Gold due to an accident at the age of 31. It's just super unfortunate.
Yeah, this band showed me that you can really mash up a variety of sad genres and make something beautiful out of it. Woods 2 is essential listening for me. I had the privilege of seeing them play at Ralph's Rock Diner in Worcester shortly before David passed. It was a real treat. Woods is one of our favorites.
Seriously. The surviving members went on to form Throssenblatt, which is a New Brunswick-based black metal band. Freaking killer. If you haven't checked them out, please do that.
I have been instructed to talk about 3 classic Canadian metal bands that I feel are not just the best, but best represent what Canadian metal is all about. That first band being the one and the only Voivod, hailing from Jonquière and Saguenay in the French province of Quebec. Voivod is consistently one of the heaviest, weirdest, and most fascinating bands to emerge not just out of Canadian metal, or even Canadian rock, but quite possibly the Canadian music scene as a whole. Known for tight, angular, thrashy, avant-garde riffery, bizarre song structures, psychedelic vocal harmonies, and spacey textures, Voivod has been responsible for some of my favorite metal albums of all time, including prog metal classics like Dimension Hatros and Nothing Face, speed metal gems like War and Pain and Roar, and their undisputed masterpiece, Killing Technology, which still, to this day, nearly 35 years after its initial release, is packed with some of the most bloodthirsty and schizophrenic thrash metal I have ever heard. The fact is, this shit is too tight, too heavy, too intense, and too insane to ignore. And the amazing thing is, Voivod is one of the few aging metal bands left over from the 1980s that still sounds great and is putting out consistently great material. So great, in fact, that they're winning awards for it. Their most recent studio album, The Wake, won the Juno Award for Best Metal Album, which is basically the Canadian equivalent to that fucking Best Metal Performance thing at the Grammys. Even their bad albums are still genuinely pretty interesting, like Angel Rat and the criminally underrated Outer Limits. What more can I say, man? It's fucking Voivod. Go check them out if you haven't already.
Cryptopsy holds a very special place in my heart. Well, I was enjoying Cannibal Corpse and stuff like that. I was in a movie making community online, and the guys that I was chatting with about metal were like, oh, no. Cannibal Corpse is for wimps. And I remember hearing Phobophile for the first time, and I was just floored. Couldn't believe it. In vivid contrast to tech death metalers Gorguts, Canadian brethren here, Cryptopsy actually replaces the more mystical atmospheres that Gorguts goes for with just eye-gouging brutality and slamming grooves. They also introduced one of the most technical drummers of the time with Flo Mornier. He is just an exceptional player that just took the whole genre to another level.
I mean, Cryptopsy is just fucking quintessential death metal listening. What other things could you possibly want from the Canadian scene that they just weren't delivering? I mean, Gorguts is doing their own thing, but Cryptopsy is just totally new fucking space. Technical death metal done right, riffs, brutality. What else you need?
Yeah, from the mid-90s through to the 2000s, Cryptopsy was a force to be reckoned with, but I think everything after Once was not. It's actually really completely foreign to me. What would you think about maybe doing a Cryptopsy discography rating?
I think we should. We should do that with Rob Walton of the Metal Meltdown.
That would be great. So let's do that. Let's keep an eye out for that one.
Let us know in the comments if you want to see it. Rob doesn't know, so,
yeah.
It's
going to be a surprise for him.
Yeah, it's all based on you guys. Unleash the Archers. This is a band name I don't understand. How do you unleash the Archers? Anyways, I digress. This band is fucking awesome. Formed in 2007 by vocalist Brittany Slays and drummer Scott and vocalist Scott Buchanan. Unleash the Archers are a Canadian power metal band from British Columbia signed to Napalm Records. They also mix in elements of epic heavy metal, traditional metal, and also some melodic death metal in there with some harsh vocals. Fucking awesome. This is a killer band with a fantastic discography, embracing theatrics in their music videos to elevate the music even further. They've released 5 studio albums and 2 EPs to date, all of them at least pretty goddamn good, if not fucking essential listening. My favorite albums, though, are Apex and Abyss, released in 2017 and 2020, where the storyline of Apex was continued into Abyss. Fantastic band and musicianship, and it seems like they're just now really starting to get their stride in terms of the recognition that they deserve. Another cool thing, too, they're working on a graphic novel, which is the storyline from Apex to Abyss, so that's pretty neat.
That's awesome. I think they are really a hidden gem in the power metal scene. It's really good to see them making their name known. It's like you said with the last couple records. I kind of wish they would step away a little bit from the hour-long full lengths and maybe focus on a couple 30 to 40 minute long rippers. Besides that, they are doing all the right things.
Fantastic band. Check them out if you haven't.
The next band I want to tell you all about is Gorguts, hailing from Sherbrooke, again in the French province of Quebec. These guys may have never seen the same level of acclaim and adoration that Morbid Angel and Cannibal Corpse and Obituary and Death and so many more death metal bands would have seen in the late 80s and into the early and even into the mid 90s, but nonetheless, Gorguts remain quite possibly one of the most influential. Early records like Considered Dead and The Erosion of Sanity are quintessential to the development of Canadian death metal and of Canadian extreme music, and are, in their own right, legitimate underlooked gems of the death metal genre as a whole. But the album I'd like to specifically focus on for this video is Obscura, released in 1998, because it is, without question, one of the most complex and bizarre pieces of music ever concocted and released to the public. And I'm not saying this to be dramatic. I have spent years analyzing and dissecting this album, getting to know its many twists and turns, and I can very honestly say, after all that time, I have no idea how or why this album works. It's so weird that it probably shouldn't. This album literally breaks the rules of music. This is the kind of shit that would make my grade 9 music teacher fucking cringe. A lightning in a bottle moment for avant-garde metal, for progressive metal, for technical technical death metal, or whatever the fuck you want to call this particular fusion of all these styles. The mentally, psychologically damaging atmosphere, the sheer technical, musical brilliance of this thing has yet to be matched by any tech death or avant-garde band since. It couldn't even really be recaptured by Gorguts with the follow-up record From Wisdom to Hate, which, don't get me wrong, still a fucking fantastic record. But Obscura really is a lightning in a bottle moment. Lightning scratches the bottle on From Wisdom to Hate, but Obscura fully captures it. And perhaps knowing how monumental and unique a record like Obscura is, Gorguts have since never tried to replicate it, instead moving into moodier, more evocative and progressive territory with records like Colored Sands and the Pleiades Dust EP. Holy shit, go check these motherfuckers out.
Okay, this is it, my curveball, Alexisonfire. Rob chose Protest the Hero, so I figured this pick was a bit complimentary to that. So, my young adult years, as we were talking about earlier, I was really into emotionally charged bands that pulled from the pop-punk, hardcore, and metal scene to create a sound that made the true metalheads just cringe. Alexisonfire started in 2003, being one of the first bands from Canada to showcase the Ontario hardcore and punk scene. Yes, their name is fucking stupid and triggers the English nerd in me. They have those long-ass titles in their songs that sound like they should be periodicals from the New Yorker, but man, their music is monumental, it's progressive, heartfelt, and utterly unique. Once you're done with Alexisonfire's short discography, be sure to check out their sister band, City and Color, for some insane music from Alexisonfire founder Dallas Green.
I've never listened to him, so I'll just have to check him out, I guess.
All right, there we go.
To Mold. Anyone who watches this channel and knows cute little me understands that my love and passion for Soulsborne games and metal meshed together is just beyond the frame of this screen. To Mold is actually an item from the Chalice dungeons in Bloodborne. Nerd!
Nerd alert!
What? But also a fucking phenomenal and grimy, disgusting death metal band hailing from Toronto. Formed in 2015, To Mold have released 3 full-length albums and completely took the metal scene by storm with that old school grimy production and filthy fucking death metal riffs. Currently signed to 20 Buck Spin, we unfortunately haven't seen any releases since Planetary Clairvoyance in 2019, but they do have a song featured on the Cyberpunk 2077 soundtrack, which I think is fucking badass for an underground metal band. Few bands have been able to top or replicate their sound because we're seeing this kind of resurgence of psychedelic, weird, old school lo-fi death metal that I feel like just they don't hit the level of To Mold. I just love this band so much. They're fucking awesome.
Yeah, this is a band I'm not as familiar with as you are, but I have really enjoyed what I've heard, and I think they really are on the cutting edge of this new wave of old school death metal. I really love that too, that they're targeting a niche audience by injecting video game lore into the music. It's such a cool thing.
Seriously, their whole discography is a fucking banger. Check it out.
And now this brings us to our third and final band, Protest the Hero, hailing from Whitby, Ontario. These guys are quite possibly one of the strangest and most exciting bands to pop out of heavy music within the past 10 to 15 years, with an extremely bizarre, explosive, extravagant sound that can only really be accurately described as a Molotov cocktail of melodic metalcore, post-hardcore, pop-punk, progressive metal, thrash metal, with symphonic overtures and wild time signatures and insane percussion and a literal firework on lead vocals. Their most recent studio album, Palimpsest in particular, dropped with the weight, literally and figuratively, of an atomic fucking bomb. It was their biggest, boldest, and most provocative record to date, with some of their most experimental and grandiose songwriting, coupled with concepts and themes based around the lies often told about American history, about colonialism, about capitalism, about racial justice. And while it is nothing short of a coincidence that this album dropped in the midst of a series of racially motivated political and social crises, it is a coincidence that Protest the Hero absolutely used to their advantage. It makes the album all the more poignant, all the more powerful, all the more striking. But perhaps what I admire most about Protest the Hero, aside from, you know, the insane, over-the-top, explosive tunes, is the fact that they're the epitome of a do-it-yourself metal band. They've seen a lot of legitimate success, despite never really being too much in the public eye, despite not really having any support from like any record label, let alone a major one at that. But starting with 2013's Volition, nearly everything they've done has been independently released, and as a result, they've had the freedom to kind of experiment with how they release their music. For instance, with Volition, that album was funded completely by fans via Indiegogo. And just like Voivod, they won the Juno Award for Best Metal Album back in 2013 with the aforementioned Volition. Unlike Voivod, Protest the Hero have since been nominated multiple more times for the aforementioned Pacific Myth and for Volition as well. They've won a few others for production and artwork, and they've also been recognized by the Canadian Independent Music Awards. For all of these reasons, Protest the Hero is one of the best Canadian metal bands out there. Maybe not as prolific or as inspirational or influential as Voivod, Gorguts, or a slew of other bands that perhaps the Forge Masters have already mentioned, but one of the best nonetheless, and certainly one of the hardest working as well. I mean, my fucking lord, these guys never stop. Alright, I think that'll do it for me and Chompy. Thank you for having us. Thank you for listening to me ramble and bitch and moan like a goddamn lunatic. If you want to hear me do more of that, may I recommend you check me out on the Metal Meltdown if you haven't already. Subscribe to Forge Master Metal Reviews as well if you haven't already. And as always, y'all have yourself a fantastic fucking day.
What other bands from Canada do you love? Let us know in the comments below. Hit that like button for us and hit subscribe if you're new. And make sure you go follow Rob Walton of the Metal Meltdown. Link in the description. Go check him out.
As always, go with the gods, our Forge Master brethren. Winter is coming, but as Canadians, we embrace that shit. See you next time.
We're not Canadian.
I am.
Oh.